Hello and welcome to the Under Center podcast, back live after week one of the 2023 NFL season. I am joined here live by Al and by Reen. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me today.
No problem.
Always happy to be on the show.
Looking forward to talking about week one. It was great to have football back, finally.
It was, and Sorry, go, Reen.
I was about to say the script writers earned their bonuses this week.
I was going to say, yeah, if nobody believed it wasn't scripted before, I think they might be leaning a little bit there now. I put in the tagline to this. We're going to review the chaos that is week one. I feel like every year it's a little bit up in the air. Teams are finding themselves out week one. You get a little bit of crazy scores, and we might move through as we get through the season. We're going to fine tune our format a little bit, but I think it's worth doing this weekend, or this week at least, go through all the games of last weekend. We won't spend too long on some of the more inane ones, but we'll dive into a little bit of detail, decide who's for real, who's a flash in the pan week one, and where teams are laying. Al, I would suspect when we get there, you're going to have a little bit of explaining to do. But before we get in, we all were down in the back page watching the NFL action on Red Zone. There was a fantastic atmosphere. We had a great time. Some delicious food. I know myself and Alan enjoyed the pepperoni pizza a lot. What a fantastic atmosphere. What a fantastic atmosphere it was. So we are sponsored by the Backpage Pub in Fisborough in Dublin this year. So we thank them very much for their sponsorship, and we highly recommend anybody who's watching the show, who's looking for something to do on a Sunday evening, especially when there's some gaps in the sporting calendar, let's say, and you're looking for somewhere to go, nice evening, chill evening. They're going to have the Red Zone up. They're also going to have the Sky Sports game as well. So a fantastic place to go and watch sports. We can now attest to that. We did it this weekend and we all had a great time. But lads, let's dive into the football, and we got a doozy to start us off. The Thursday night NFL kickoff game. Ryan, I'm going to start off this one with you. Lions win a squeaker against Patrick Mahomes. They were down Travis Kelce. And I guess I'm going to come straight out of the gap and ask you, are the Lions legit this year?
I think they might be, to be honest. I didn't pick them as a team going to the playoffs in my predictor, but looking at that game to start the season, it kind of feels like they've set down a marker now by beating the Super Bowl champions. And I don't think it's a fair assessment to go, oh, well, they were missing their top tight end and they were missing their top D tackle. It's kind of irrelevant. You have to beat the team that's in front of you. The Chiefs, if they are the Super Bowl contenders, legit team that they suggest that they are, they got to go out and beat the Lions week one. And the Lions really showed up. I really enjoyed the way that they played. Now, they need to give Jahmyr Gibbs more time on that field. They kept bringing in Montgomery, and he started running for 2 yards, 1 yard. Whenever they brought in Gibbs, he was electric. He could catch the ball out of the backfield. I think they need to give him even more carries. And, yeah, they're going to be certainly playoff contenders this year.
Yeah, Al, a difficult one. I think the Chiefs, would you agree with Ryan that they dropped one here early, the one that they might want back at the end of the season? It's not like Patrick Mahomes played particularly badly, 226, 2 touchdowns. He did have an interception, but his QBR has been 70.5. It was better than Goff. And they were missing their star tight end in Kelce. A lot of drops, a lot of suffering with the wide receivers. Is that where the problem lies for the Kansas City Chiefs at the moment?
Not entirely, but yes. If Tony just catches a perfectly thrown ball, the Chiefs win the game, probably. Mm-hmm. I don't think they really deserved to win the game. They were messy. They were undisciplined. As you said, too many drops. And some issues on defense, but I think I don't know. I'm not sold on either of these teams right now. The Lions were good for sure. It's not like, oh, maybe they might be bad. They're a good team. They're going to be good, but one interception that wasn't on Mahomes. And the Chiefs win the game. So I think both teams need some stuff to clean up. But yeah, it was a fun game.
Yeah, and Rian mentioned, Al, that he reckons the Lions are going to be one to watch. Do you feel it's the same thing? Is some of this negativity on the Lions maybe a hangover from years gone by when they have been really not competitive?
Yeah, for sure. Like, they have too much talent, I think, to not at least make a push for the playoffs. You know, they're going to be there, you know, hanging around in the wild card. We'll see if they make it to the wild card at least. I think they definitely could.
Moving on, we're going to start next at the Washington Commanders getting their first win of the season against the Arizona Cardinals, 20-16. A bit of a squeaker. I think the Commanders' defense looks pretty good, albeit against Joshua Dobbs, who wouldn't be a world star quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. And I think the Commanders' offense still has a ways to go. I don't think Sam Howell played particularly badly. He also didn't stand out, in my opinion. And that's all I really have. I laid out last week before we got into this game. This was one of the ones I reviewed. And I said there's 4 outcomes here for the Commanders. They dominate and look dynamic on offense. They don't dominate, but they still look dynamic on offense. They win and don't look dynamic on offense, or they lose and it's a catastrophe. And I think we got the second worst one where, yes, we won. It wasn't an immediately obvious turnaround from the offense that we saw out of the Commanders last season. Al, why don't you give me your, let's say, non-biased opinion of what you felt the Commanders put on tape this week?
Their defense was nice. I liked a lot of their defense. Their defensive line wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be, but like week 1, like, you know, I think they'll improve. There's, you know, it was, as you said, it was chaos this week. You know, there's so many teams that have to shake off a bit of rust. I think though there is, you know, some work needs to do in the offense. You know, there was a lot of stuff left out there in the field, and especially against like a really poor Cardinals defense, almost making LJ Collier look good. Yeah, I think, but it's, you know, you could say that about every team. Week 1, like, yeah, you know, you can't predict anything. We got half our picks wrong. Well, I certainly did. So I didn't watch a ton of that game. So it was good though. It was fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, we were watching it on Red Zone, and it didn't come up very often, which usually is an indicator of not a particularly explosive matchup. Rian, why don't you take the Cardinals side of things? Is this a little bit of a signal? Do you think that they're maybe not going to be such a pushover, or is it just a slow start to the Commanders that made them look significantly more competitive than you expect them to be going forward in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I do expect the Commanders to be more competitive going forward. We have to remember this is not Sam Howell's first start for the Commanders, but it is his first time going out there as the guy moving forward. So that was going to weigh on him a little bit. He did enough for me to be confident in him for the rest of the season. On the flip side of it, yeah, this is a total tank job from the Arizona Cardinals. They didn't acquit themselves too badly versus the Commanders, but I can see them losing in a lot of games like that, where teams will do enough to beat the Arizona Cardinals, won't blow them out, but they don't have to. There's not enough dynamicism on the offensive side of the ball for you to be worried about them going down and scoring a touchdown on you to kind of bring the game back close again. So all you need to do is be ahead of the Cardinals, and you're going to win that game. So that's where I see it.
Rain, another team we thought might suffer this season is the Houston Texans. They did suffer through week 1, 25-9 loss against the Baltimore Ravens. How did you feel CJ Stroud played? I don't know if you have the numbers on front of you, but it looks like they asked him to throw it quite a lot. He had 44 pass attempts. He ended up with 242 yards. He couldn't throw a touchdown, but he also managed to avoid any significant turnover with an interception. How was it as a first run out for him? Are you surprised they asked him to throw the ball so much?
Yeah, I mean, I think when they have guys like Dameon Pierce in the backfield, I was expecting at least in the first game for them to kind of rely on that running game and maybe sprinkle in some shorter passes, screens, quick outs, stuff of that nature, just to get the guy comfortable. But they really looked like they kind of wanted to get him involved early and often. So yeah, the fact that he didn't have a turnover, like it's rookies throw the ball to the opposite team a lot, and for him not to have a turnover in that game, that bodes quite well for him moving forward.
Yeah, Ali, it's certainly, I guess, rather teach him into throwing touchdowns than try and teach him out of throwing interceptions. What did you see on the Ravens side? Because from what I saw, on the scoreline, it looks like a comfortable win. But I did watch some of this game, and it certainly looked like they made hard work of themselves. We saw Lamar Jackson turn the ball over, running quite loosely with the ball. He didn't have his most effective game on the ground. We know it's going to be an emphasis for him to also throw the ball to try and get the attention of the defense away from that and maybe open up that run game a little bit more, keep himself healthy a little bit more. What did you make of it? Only 169 yards in the air on 22 attempts, and kind of stumbled to a win. I guess the gold or the silver lining is Zay Flowers looks as good as advertised.
Yeah, that's honestly one of the only bright spots of what I saw on offense for the Ravens. Not to say they were completely awful, but you're playing against what is a rebuilding bottom tier team in the NFL. You did enough to win, but if you play like that against other teams, it was a bit messy. Lamar Jackson didn't play great. I think he played well enough, but he threw an interception. I think there was another turnover in there somewhere. Yeah, I just think the offense looked a bit messy, a little disjointed. I think they need to clean that up, or else they will struggle against contenders this year.
Reen, how bad is this J.K. Dobbins injury for the Ravens offense? Dynamic player. I believe he was injured a little bit last season as well, so they haven't really got a full go out of him yet. When he was on the pitch last season, he looked extremely dangerous. There was high hopes from this season. He seems to be struggling, he went down obviously with a season-ending injury, so we're likely not going to see him again at all for the rest of the season, no matter how far the Ravens get. How significant of a blow is that to that offense?
Yeah, I think it's pretty tough because he's quite clearly the most dynamic back in that backfield. Yeah, it's something that they have relied on in the past with J.K. Dobbins. He's a dynamic runner. He's capable going for over 1,000 yards. I'm not sure he actually has in his career so far, just due to injuries, and this is just another one to add on top. We're probably going to see a much bigger workload from the likes of Justice Hill in the coming weeks, and that will bode well for his development. But yeah, they're missing out on a really dynamic part of their offense here. So I think receivers definitely need to start showing up more. I think Odell Beckham didn't do enough for me in that game. 2 receptions. I think he had 9 yards in the game total. 29 yards in the game total. So yeah, those receivers need to step up, and so does Lamar Jackson. He needs to become a passer to get this team going.
Yeah, I don't think Ravens fans will be overly worried. I think they've been through this before. Obviously, last season Lamar came out and threw a monster aerial game, but in terms of getting wins at this stage of the season can be very valuable for the team towards the back end of the season. So maybe that's what's more important at the moment, and they're going to try and build these players in like Odell Beckham, like Zay Flowers, and like Lamar Jackson in the pocket. We'll move on to what I felt was the biggest surprise of the weekend. Maybe some people would argue not. I just happen to have a very low bar on Deshaun Watson and what I expect out of him. But that was, of course, the Cleveland Browns 24-3 victory over the Cincinnati Bengals. The Browns were at home. It was terrible weather, but Joe Burrow did not look good. Al, what did you make of this scoreline? And what did you make of the performance that Joe Burrow left on the pitch?
Yeah, it wasn't good. It wasn't a pretty thing to look at, that offense. Joe Burrow didn't look good. His offensive line was just getting eaten alive by what is looking to be probably one of the best defensive lines in the league. And Myles Garrett, I mean, there was a highlight of him going around just like pretty much playing with the tackles. There was no way that was going to work. Even if Burrow played better, I don't think they were going to have a good day. They have to address that offensive line. and they didn't in the offseason as much as they should have, and now they're going to pay the price this year. If they can't get more cohesive, they're going to suffer this all year. Like, the Browns' offense isn't that good. Nick Chubb is, probably the best running back or top 3 in the league. But other than that, I mean, Deshaun Watson looks bad. I think, I don't think he's going to look much better. The receivers are all right. Again, same with their tight ends. They have to get more tight in offense, or that's going to be the story of the year.
Yeah, Rian, there's a panic button on front of you. Have you pushed it yet? How far away is your hand if you're a Bengals fan or a Bengals player? I just want to put this in front of you as well. The weather was not great. Both Joe Burrow and Deshaun Watson combined for well under 250 yards total between the pair of them. He also had that injury in the preseason. I don't know. How much do you feed into that? Give us your opinion on where the Bengals stand now after week 1.
I'd say you probably kind of have to press the panic button a little bit. In the last couple of years, Joe Burrow has been the most sacked quarterback in the league over the past 2 years. And it looks like he's going to be keeping that record up for this year as well, given what we saw at the weekend. Yeah, it's just strange to me that you pay so much money. So he signed a record-breaking deal coming into this week. And you pay all that money for your quarterback, but you totally disregard his protection altogether. They have not added pieces to that O-line. I'm not sure if it's gotten any worse. I won't lie. I don't keep much of an eye on the AFC North. But yeah, it's a strange one to me. In terms of Joe Burrow's performance, maybe he feels like he needs to live up to the expectation of being that top paid player in the league all time. But I mean, that's going to go away as soon as the next quarterback is up for his contract. He's not going to be the top paid quarterback. He just needs to start playing free-flowing football like he did in the past couple of years, and he'll be all right. But they do need to address that offensive line.
Al, before we move on, just a quick comment on the Browns. We spoke about Deshaun Watson. Obviously, my own feeling, as I've just said, is that the weather certainly played a part in both these quarterbacks' ability to put air yards together. But Nick Chubb got off already another 100-yard game under his belt in week 1. Is this a sign to come to say that the Browns' ground game is as potent as ever, and they might not need Deshaun Watson to do a whole lot to win plenty of games this season?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The Browns are absolutely going to lean on him. Now, they might struggle a little bit more because they lost Conklin for the year. I think it was Conklin. But yeah, you have to. Even if you have Patrick Mahomes, you have to lean on that run game with as good as it is. If you have a guy that can get you 100 yards a game, lean on him, use him. Take some pressure off your quarterback, get those chunk plays out of him. I think, yeah, they'll keep doing that, and more so if Deshaun Watson doesn't perform.
Mm-hmm. Working our way down the board, another disappointing game for the Minnesota Vikings. They went down to Tampa Bay 20-17. Tampa Bay, a team we didn't have a whole lot of hopes for, especially given the quarterback room that they have. Baker Mayfield thoroughly outplayed, 173 yards compared to Kirk Cousins' 344. Justin Jefferson alone had 150 receiving yards. Rain, I don't know how, but is this somehow a classic Kirk Cousins bottle job? He lost 2 fumbles on the day. He struggled. He had an interception. I mean, I don't know if it's fair to say he struggled to get 344 yards, but they still managed to lose the game. Where does this leave you as a Minnesota Vikings fan? And how optimistic are you now as a Tampa Bay fan?
If I'm a Tampa Bay fan, I'll start with them. I am not totally optimistic. Like the team didn't play well. Somehow they won that game. It was a bit bizarre looking at it, but I'd absolutely agree that this is a classic Kirk Cousins bottle job. He stat stuffing. That's all he's done for his entire career is stuff the stat line. You look at that game, 320 odd yards, 3 touchdown passes. I don't think he had an interception on the day, did he?
He did have an interception, yeah.
He had an interception on the day. Okay, well, still 300 plus yards and 3 touchdowns and losing a game. The NFL have him up for the Air Miles Player of the Game or whatever that stupid thing that they do with FedEx. I think if you come out with an L, you should be automatically disqualified from winning that award because you got to win. You got to win. That's the only stat that counts as a quarterback, and Kirk Cousins doesn't do it enough. Now, I know he had all of those wins last season, but when it came down to it in the playoffs, losing to the Giants, that was horrendous. I don't think Kirk Cousins deserves a shot in this league. The Minnesota Vikings should be drafting a quarterback in the first round next season, possibly Quinn Ewers.
Yeah, Al, I just watched the documentary about the Minnesota Vikings, and it referenced Kirk Cousins coming in. That narrator also was not a big fan of Kirk Cousins, and he pointed out that in the years where he was a quarterback for the Washington Commanders, he played 10 primetime games. 6 primetime games. He lost, 10 primetime games. He lost all of them. And in 4, he still had a QBR of over 100. And I think that speaks volumes. Should we blame it all on Kirk Cousins? Always. Yes, we should, because he was once the highest paid quarterback. And you just got to win. That's the bottom line. In this game, you just have to be the guy who wins the games. You can't say, it's not my fault. We didn't get a yard or they dropped the ball. It's a loss, and it has to go down as a loss for you. And there's no use throwing for 350 odd yards in a 3-point loss at home against a team that struggled to put even 200 offensive yards together against you. But anyway, I'm sorry, I teed you up to answer that, but I think we'll move straight on, straight into the Titans against the Saints, Alan. I'll let you go. This to me is one of those ones we probably won't spend too much time on. These teams are going to have to find themselves. I think that's fair to say. Their seasons will slowly unravel. An interesting starting point against each other, given I suspect we won't see them too far away from each other with regards to results at the end of the season. Do you have anything insightful to let us know about this game, Al?
Not really,
Derek Carr, 305 yards. A touchdown, but also a very Derek Carr interception.
Yeah,
no,
he looked like he sucked. Another stat stuffer.
Both of those offenses looked boring. You know what I really liked in that game? Jeffrey Simmons, one of the best contracts in the NFL right now. I love watching him play. Great signing for the Titans. Other than that, it was a boring game to watch. You wouldn't think Carr threw for 300 yards, and it just boring. Neither team could really get much going, and then 15 or 16 points each.
My takeaway from that game is Tannehill looks like a bum, and Will Levis can't beat him out. So Will Levis must be the ultimate bum.
We were in the back page, and I was shouting there, just put Malik Willis in. You have absolutely nothing to lose. Tannehill looks horrible. Put Malik Willis in. What do you have to lose?
Or Levis. Yeah. I mean, they have 3 quarterbacks.
Well,
there.
he was healthy scratch. I think something. Well, last minute, I think there was something wrong with him.
Right.
Yeah, I think Ryan Tannehill, no touchdowns, 3 interceptions on a 1-point loss. You gotta kind of chalk it down to that for sure. But we'll move swiftly on. Rian, speaking of bums, your bummy Carolina Panthers lost 24-10 to the magnificent Atlanta Falcons. Tyler Algier ripped you apart, and Bryce Young threw about as much as a bowl of noodles. What was your takeaways? This is the most eloquent I've been all program. Rian, let us know what your takeaways were from this game.
I'm worried, man. I'm worried about Bryce Young. Didn't really attempt any deep balls at all. Had 2 identical picks over the middle of the field, both to Jesse Bates. And when he did throw downfield, they had that kind of Kyler Murray looping sky ball that I just hate because it just allows safeties to come across and pretty much murder your receivers if they come out like that. I want my big, tall quarterback to be throwing lasers on a rope. And I don't think Bryce Young will be ever able to do that. So I am worried. But yeah, the Panthers looked really bad in that game. They didn't allow Sanders the amount of touches that he should have been getting. And yeah, I mean, the commentators kept talking about how DJ Chark was not available for the game and he's the deep threat there. But I mean, like, Jonathan Mingo is essentially a DK Metcalf, like baby DK Metcalf. So why can't you throw deep to him? It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, a couple of comments coming in here saying that the Panthers quarterback, Bryce Young, certainly looked small. It was a definite worry of everyone when he was drafted. But also, I would say he's as a rookie quarterback, you would have to say he discovered pretty quickly what a comfort blanket is. Hayden Hurst taking up 5 receptions for 41 yards. That is a classic tight end. He nearly didn't ingratiate himself very well when he immediately chucked his first touchdown ball as far into the stands as he could get it. I believe it luckily came back down, but he took a bit of heat from that. I think that's maybe the most riled up the Panthers fans got about this whole week 1 fiasco.
I think the fan probably got some nice front row seats for the season and signed jersey to give that ball back. Look, Bryce Young didn't look good. And there's a lot of question marks. But, like, you know, week 1, game 1, rookie, he's going to struggle, you know. Like, there's very few quarterbacks come into the league and just, you know, start balling and start dealing the ball around, you know. It takes a while. And if it takes a year, if it takes 2 years, like, it's a complicated position to learn. And I think it takes time. I think, like, they have to, like, figure some things out in offense, and because he is so small, they have to figure out how to protect him. Because, you know, when you have, you know, 3+ 100-pound lads, you know, bearing down on him every play, you know, you can only take so much of that. You know, Russell Wilson got away with it for years without getting injured, but, you know, that was luck.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One thing I will say, though, just on Bryce Young's defense, if you look back at number 1 overall drafted quarterbacks between now and the year 2002, those quarterbacks are 0-18-1 in the first game of the season. So historically, first drafted quarterbacks do not have a good first game. So there's a little bit of optimism left in me, and I hope to God he proves me wrong, because I can't do another quarterback carousel.
Yeah, look, it's going to be one of those narratives that unravels itself as the season go on. I suspect the rest of the squad as well, Reed, staying healthy around him is going to be very important. If he loses the likes of Hayden Hurst, it's going to make his job even more difficult. But we'll move on. Jaguars, Colts. I think maybe one of the most positive stories out of week 1, arguably for both teams. Jaguars looked good, scored well. They had some really nice big chunk plays. And then, who was Calvin Ridley and Zay Jones both looked pretty effective on the field. And then on the other side of the ball, I would argue Anthony Richardson did pretty well in his first game out. They asked him to throw the ball plenty as well. 37 attempts, he got 223 yards. Did throw an interception, but he also got himself his first NFL touchdown, and he scored another one with his legs. So not too bad. He looks like he has plenty of attributes, Al, to make it in this league. Michael Pittman as well also had almost 100 yards receiving as well. So he's very quickly discovered his favorite target down there in Indianapolis, over there in Indianapolis as well. What did you make of that game? Would you agree pretty positive for both teams despite the loss for the Colts?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like, this is best case scenario for the Colts. You know, they probably came into this game saying, oh, yeah, we expected to, you know, do well and win and all that. But, like, realistically, with a quarterback as raw as Anthony Richardson and a lot of pretty big question marks on offense, a lot of people came in pretty reserved. I was surprised. I was really surprised with how well they did. They were effective, and it absolutely was not as one-sided as I thought it was going to be. I thought this was going to be a beat down by the Jags, and the Colts held their own. And I'm really impressed by Richardson. But there was an injury scare, and if the Colts kill him, I'm going to throw Irsay in prison myself. Get an offensive line for your quarterback. Stop killing quarterbacks. I like Luck as well, and he killed him.
And you love Gardner Minshew as well, I'm sure, who'll be coming in as the backup there. Rian, before we move on from this game, one thing jumps out at me at the rushing attack of Jacksonville that I've just noticed here as we were going through the game. There's a man on that rushing offense called Tank Bigsby, and as a fantasy player, his stats make me a little bit nervous because he had 7 carries for 13 yards, but he had a touchdown. Now, that to me screams touchdown poacher for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Is he going to kill Travis Etienne's draft or fantasy value, do you think?
I think he will. He lives up to his name a little bit, Tanks Bigsby. He's good down around the goal line. Yeah, he might end up being that kind of Jamal Williams back that we saw in Detroit last year, where he didn't get a whole lot of yards, but he led the league in touchdowns. Now, I don't think Tank Bigsby's going to lead the league in touchdowns, but he's certainly going to take some of those scores away from Travis Etienne, and hopefully he develops in that backfield to kind of take a little bit of the weight off Etienne's shoulders, because Etienne, being the player that he is, catching out of the backfield, rushing the football, he will need some breaks. We've seen Christian McCaffrey getting broken by this and other running backs of that nature. So, yeah, I think it's a nice start for Tank Bigsby, and I think he is going to get some scores throughout the year.
Yeah, we'll move on to the next game on the slate. San Francisco 49ers, Pittsburgh Steelers. We're not even going to go to Al on this one because he showed us on Sunday that he's just a Purdy hater. Because they're obviously going to annihilate the Seahawks this season. No, Al, I seriously am going to let you speak on this one. Rian, Christian McCaffrey obliterated that arguably quite good Steelers. I think the questions about the Steelers was going to be on offense, not necessarily on defense. They did get 3 sacks of Brock Purdy, but he hung in there for 2 touchdowns. And then Christian McCaffrey, 150 yards on the ground and a few more in the air. And then Brandon Ayuk, 130 yards in the air. How impressed were you by the San Francisco 49ers offense?
I was very impressed. I was most impressed by Brock Purdy. I've always been a fan of his. I wasn't in the put Purdy in the bin campaign that Al was running over there. But yeah, he looked very poised, much more poised than a second-year quarterback who's only started a handful of games should have. I love that touchdown pass that he had right to the back of the end zone where he got absolutely creased, came out of the pocket, got creased while throwing the football, but still made it stick. And I got PTSD from seeing Christian McCaffrey go in for a 68-yard touchdown. It was just harrowing to watch. We really need that back in Carolina, but c'est la vie.
Right, Al, I will let you speak about the next game, which isn't a particular pleasure, unfortunately, because the next one up is Las Vegas. 1 point, miserable 17-16 win over the Denver Broncos. I don't think anyone's a winner out of this game. We kind of suspected that before it happened, and it played out in front of our eyes. I don't have anything to tee you up for with this. Is there anything that you would like to comment on this game?
There is only one stat that matters in this game, and it is 180 penalty yards. Fucking gross football. Undisciplined shite. I hated watching that. I watched the highlights and it was a gross game to watch. Russ looked a bit better, but that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, he looked a little bit better. 177 yards in the air. And then I guess if you're a Raiders fan, the positive outlook is no sacks on Jimmy Garoppolo, who, as an injury-prone quarterback, that's going to be important to do as many times as you can. we'll watch both of those teams. Again, I suspect they'll probably end up somewhere around the same record by the end of the season. So interesting place for both those teams to start. Moving swiftly on, a very interesting high-scoring game. The Dolphins and the Chargers, 36-34 win over the Dolphins. And I think the thing that leaps off the page, Rian, is Tyreek Hill, 215 receiving yards off 11 receptions with 2 touchdowns to go along with a longest reception of 47 yards. The man can fly. He could fly last season. He's still flying this season.
Yeah, absolutely. He said before the season started that he wanted to go over 2,000 receiving yards this year, and that sounds like a stupid number for a wide receiver, but he's certainly put himself on that kind of path down that road for historic numbers from a running back. I really like the way Tua played. He did have a couple of errant throws that maybe were ill-advised, but they were kind of at the end of the half going for points. Yeah, for me, though, the big standout performance was one that you might not think of. The one that stood out to me was JC Jackson for the Chargers. I think he pretty much sucked the entire game. That drive at the end of the half where he pushed Tyreek Hill in the back, or was it Tyreek Hill? It was one receiver anyway. Pushed him in the back. It was an absolute nothing play, a bomb into triple coverage in the hopes to get into field goal range, and he just laid him out. I didn't understand that. And then when he did get his interception in the second half, he decided to run it out of the end zone about 4 yards deep and get tackled at the 4-yard line, causing a punt from right at the very back of the goal line. It was crazy to me. So yeah, as we suspected, the Chargers back end needs to shore up.
Yeah, that back end has been kind of broken up with injuries the last couple of seasons, Al. So probably not a surprise they're going to take a few weeks to get their legs underneath them again. Austin Eckler, though, on the offensive side of the ball for the Chargers, hit the ground running as he typically does, 117 yards on the ground and another 47 to put him over 150 all-purpose yards. And then Keenan Allen, who had, I think, in my memory serves me right, a bit of a down year last year. He did pretty well, 76 yards receiving in, let's face it, when Austin Eckler's putting up 117 yards of rushing attack, the passing game is going to suffer a little bit on the back end of that. So plenty of positives to take away, I guess, as an LA Chargers fan against what it will be a pretty good Miami Dolphins team, it looks like.
Yeah, that was another game I didn't get to watch a ton of, but it is good to see some more what looks to be more consistency on that offense. It looked another team that looked just kind of disjointed. They didn't have enough consistency last year, and especially in the run game. And if they can keep that going and get more variety into that offense, I think they can have a really good year this year. It was a tough loss, but not for lack of trying on either side of the ball. Just a stupid mistake at the end cost them.
Yeah. Moving on, we'll go on to the Philadelphia and New England game. I think for me, one of the most interesting things of this game, Rian, is how the Eagles did not completely obliterate the New England Patriots. They managed to stay in the game. Jalen Hurts, I have to be honest, I didn't see much of this game at all. I'm going purely by the stat line I have in front of me. Jalen Hurts threw the ball 33 times. He only got 170 yards in the air. The offense looked a little bit anemic to start off the season. Only one offensive touchdown. That was a pass to Devontae Smith, who had about 50 yards on the day. And then A.J. Brown was the leading receiver. Anything of note? Yes, Mac Jones, 316 yards. So that's, I think, interesting from some of his detractors before the season. Do you think that's a positive sign for Patriots fans, how close they kept that game?
I suppose it is. Yeah, I mean, the one takeaway that I took from the game is that Mac Jones looked quite good in the game. They seem to be slowly building a receiver core around him that work to his strengths. We saw him target the tight end a couple of times in that game, something that we haven't really seen from the Patriots in years gone past. So yeah, one thing that stood out to me was how poorly Jalen Hurts played. I mean, the weather was terrible in that game, and that obviously affected him. But I mean, if the guy on the other side of the ball is putting up double your numbers, it's somewhat suspect. He had a really poor fumble, I believe, if memory serves correct, in that game also when he took off on a run. So yeah, I'd want to see more out of Jalen Hurts moving forward if I'm an Eagles fan, because they have lost a few players, particularly on that defensive line, that kept them in a lot of games last season. So they're going to really need to rely even more on Jalen Hurts than they did this season moving forward. So I would expect him to up his game.
Yeah, I'll just the 2 touchdowns coming in the first quarter, and then the Patriots, I think, did well in the second quarter to claw themselves back into the game. Ezekiel Elliott, I guess, he led the team in rushing, although he only had 29 yards on 7 carries. I suspect that's probably to do with going into a bit of a hole for the Patriots to start the game and have it to kind of pass their way back out of it. How would you see this season going from the New England Patriots now that you've seen Mac Jones is not going to at least continue the free fall of last season? He has found a bit of steady ground underneath him to start the season.
I think the Patriots can do well. I think, as you said, they showed good grit to come back from that early deficit. I think the lack of rushing yards was mainly due to I don't think they wanted to test that Eagles defensive line and linebackers too much, because I mean, you know how they are. And then Jalen Carter, fair play to him. He looked really good, and the rest of them are really good. So you don't want to test them too much. Mac Jones looked pretty nice, actually. Not brilliant. He had some misses, and there was a couple of drops in there. I think if they clean up a couple of things, this Patriots team could at least compete for a wild card spot, if not go a bit further.
Mm-hmm. We're coming towards the end of the slate of week 1 games, so we'll keep things moving along as quickly as we can. Next game up on my slate is the Green Bay Packers beating the Chicago Bears, Eden Soldier Field. Jordan Love's first official start as the solidified starter for the Green Bay Packers. 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 245 yards, about 50%, a little over 50% completion percentage. Rain, there's a Green Bay fan in your house. What is the overall takeaways? What are the vibes coming out of the Green Bay camp after week 1?
Yeah, so I think it was a very interesting game. Got to watch it. It was, great for the Packers. I think the Bears came into that game with a lot of hope. Like, it was the first game that they were going to play against a Green Bay Packers team that didn't have Aaron Rodgers for the last 20 years. And as we all know, Aaron Rodgers owns the Bears. So, yeah, they came in with a lot of optimism. But Jordan Love really looked good in that game. Like, we all saw the kind of mishaps from training camp and all that sort of thing, but I mean, I think when push comes to shove, he's a good quarterback. And how weird would it be if the Green Bay Packers walked into a 3rd Hall of Famer in a row? Now, it's a bit early in his career to be giving him that gold jacket just yet, but he acquitted himself very well. Aaron Jones looked dominant in that game. So the vibes, as you say, are good coming out of that Green Bay camp.
I suspect if Reen is right and they've walked into a 3rd dynasty quarterback, every team with a good quarterback is going to draft in the first round a first-round quarterback from now on and just sit him and just say, to hell with this. You paid you loads of money. You're going to start. We're going to draft you in the last 5 picks of the draft. We're going to go in there and we're going to sit you down. One guy went high in the draft, Justin Fields. A lot of questions on him. Al, you said in the group chat you feel like he's just proved in week 1 that he's an below average pocket passer and a miles above average runner. And I guess that was all proven to you here in week 1 of the NFL 2023 season.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I didn't see a ton of growth but he didn't have much of a chance to show that he had grown. I mean, his offensive line looked putrid, and that's being nice about it. Tight ends were bad. Wide receivers were bad. There was mistakes, miscommunications. There was one play where his guard, it's his backup guard at the moment because Tevin Jenkins is injured. For some reason, just sprints into the center, who's blocking the nose tackle, and knocks him off, and then the nose tackle has a free run at Justin Fields. It's just ugly football. Like it looks like no one cares. And Chase Claypool, who they spent a second round pick on, looks horrible. No effort.
Total ass.
Multiple screens going his way, and he's putting no effort into blocking them. Same on the run plays. I will say the one diamond in this big pile of shit offense was their run game, and specifically Roschon Johnson, the rookie. He didn't get a ton of snaps. Like, he wasn't like a bell cow in this game, but he looked nice. So they absolutely have to lean on that run game and Roschon. Justin Fields made some nice plays, but there's only so much you can do. He didn't get a chance to show much. Doesn't look like he's made much progress, but yeah, they have to fix that offense.
Ryan,
really.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just about to say, play calling really needs to be called into question with the Chicago Bears. I think, like, they brought in DJ Moore to be that number one receiver, and then they targeted him, 3 times in the game. And most of the passes that they were throwing were little wide receiver screens, little in routes where he was clearly not the hot route receiver. I mean, he had 2 big completions in a row. It got the crowd pumped. They got a lot of yards off it. And then they just stopped throwing to him again. It was crazy to see. I mean, if you're going to bring in a weapon to give your struggling quarterback an option, use that weapon. It didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Ryan, one final thing, and then we'll throw it on to, of course, we have to talk about Dan Whelan while we're on the Green Bay Packers. But one final thing before we moved on. AJ Dillon is a name that's been associated with the backfield in Green Bay for the last few seasons. And personally, I think he has a great potential as a running back. Obviously, he's behind at the moment one of the all-timers in Aaron Jones. I feel like he let himself down a little bit, AJ Dillon, in this game. They gave him the ball 13 times. He only managed 19 yards. I think that's going to be difficult for him to really stake a claim on any of those handoffs in the backfield. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is a minor blip, to be honest. We've seen him be in the top half anyway of yards per carry going back the last few seasons that he's played. He has had something of a fumbling issue in the past, which is probably limiting his snaps more so than his lack of production. In this game, he kind of came in when the game was won, where the Green Bay Packers were expected to run the football an awful lot. So the Bears were just kind of packing the box a little bit. I wouldn't put too much heed into his stat line in this game. I can see him, if he needs to play the entire game next week, if Aaron Jones is not able to go, I wouldn't be too concerned about having a non-existent running game. I think he's going to do all right.
Mm-hmm. And for all our Irish listeners, we don't normally talk about punters, but whenever the Green Bay Packers comes up, we certainly are. I'm not really going to throw, in the interest of time, just going to let everybody know, 5 punts for Dan Whelan. He averaged just a hair under 50 yards a punt, with his longest being a fairly impressive 68-yard punt. So we'll be watching the Irishman very closely as he goes on. Rian, I think we can just sit back and relax for the next game. I'm just going to throw it to Al. Al, the god-awful LA Rams smashed your Seattle Seahawks 30-13. Please present your excuses.
Seahawks played badly. The end. No, look, the sky isn't falling. Again, week 1, there's plenty of things that went well as much as things, went badly. I mean, one of the reasons was, second half we lost both our tackles. That's going to kill any offense. That was a killer. That was an absolute killer. But the main thing was the secondary they got pantsed on live TV. They got embarrassed by a UDFA and Tutu Atwell, who weighs about 100 pounds. It wasn't completely awful. I think the Rams are going to be better than we think. It wasn't, they were just bad and got lucky. Stafford looked good. I think he was decisive. Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell looked, nice. They were making some nice catches. But yeah, it was an ugly game. It wasn't fun to watch. At least our run defense looked much improved. If there's anything to take away from this game, is our run defense is much improved, and Jordan Brooks might finally be an elite linebacker, and especially coming off an ACL 7 months ago is kind of amazing.
And Rian, very briefly before we move on, just in the interest of time, is it still, do you think, the Seahawks the most likely to compete with the 49ers? Or after week one, is it your opinion that this division has become a one-horse race?
It's already won. The division is won by the 49ers.
Fair enough. I don't think we need to elaborate any more than that. Viewers that know my fandom might not be surprised that the next game might not take too long to breeze through. Sunday Night Football, the Cowboys absolutely dominated the New York Giants. The Giants looked extremely wobbly. I have to say that was the biggest surprise for me. I believe the Cowboys scored on offense, defense, and on special teams. So that's excellent for them. The only negative I have is that in such a dominating win as a Cowboys fan, I think you'd like to see more offense from Dak Prescott. It's only week one. I'm going to try and hold off on the bashing in the interest of viewerships, getting our viewerships up. And also, look, the reality is plenty of quarterbacks had a slow start. The team was cruising. He did not need to step up. He did not have to step up. Tony Pollard ran the ball reasonably well. And that's kind of all I have to say. Guys, do you guys have any inputs on this game in particular? Anything stand out to you? I think we'll give it one more week before we crown the Cowboys absolute certainty for the NFC East. But beyond that, very good win, very nice start, high confidence, and plenty of nice things on tape. Anything else?
Yeah, No, go ahead.
Sorry, Al, go ahead.
I was just surprised by how bad the Giants were. I expected, something, or at least like maybe a repeat of last year where they looked a bit above average, but struggled. They were horrible in every facet of the game. They were horrible.
Yeah. The only thing I have to add to that is the fact that they gave more carries to Daniel Jones than Saquon Barkley is absurd.
Yeah, and it's not like Saquon was doing particularly badly. I guess it got to a certain point where the game kind of just got out of reach. One thing to note as well, they did keep Daniel Jones in the game the whole time, despite the loss. I suspect that's probably to give him some live game reps outside of the preseason. I imagine if that was to happen longer or further into the season, that would not be the case. But I suspect week one, the plan was to give him the full game. We'll wrap up Monday Night Football. One ginormous talking point on this one, of course, is the Aaron Rodgers injury. There's plenty of stuff on that out there. We will, of course, address it in the sense that the obvious starter for the New York Jets is down. He is out for the season. It is the only situation like that in the NFL, as far as my memory serves me. So we will be talking about the quarterback position in that respect. Al, what did you make of what is now, at the moment, or at the time of recording, the Zach Wilson starting quarterback now for 2023 for the New York Jets. He didn't impress particularly, but he got a win and did what he needed to do.
I think Zach Wilson might do okay, and that will be enough to get them, maybe even 10 wins. Like their defense proved that they were very good, and they might improve. Their defensive line looked really, really nice. Sauce looked all right. DJ Reed looked nice as usual. Like loads of talent on that side of the ball. If Zach Wilson doesn't suck, they could knock 10 wins out. I think they're a good team.
Ryan, how excited were you to see Breece Hall back? He was a fan favorite when he burst onto the scene. Obviously, pretty high draft pick coming out of college. Expected a lot out of him, and he flashed it right before his season-ending injury. He's back now. He hit the ground run, 127 yards on the ground. What did you make of that?
Yeah, that 86-yard rush really signaled to me that he's back now. He still did look a little bit like he's wary of his knee. I mean, the knee had to be repaired surgically twice last offseason, meniscus and ACL. So, yeah, it's going to be a difficult road for him getting back to full confidence. I mean, even on that 86-yard run, it looked like he slowed down. It looked like he had the end zone to himself, and just something made him feel not right, and he had to step out of bounds. But, yeah, look, he looks excellent. If they can up his share in the backfield, I think, yeah, it's going to be great because, I can't remember his name. Who's the guy that they just brought in, the free agent?
Dalvin Cook.
Dalvin Cook. He looks like he's losing explosiveness by the game. So I expect him to be pants by the end of the season. So they're really going to need to rely on Breece Hall.
Yeah, Rim, we'll stick with you. The rushing game on the opposite side of the ball, Buffalo Bills, remains I would say, one glaring absence of this offensive weapon. They didn't do a good job. James Cook, brother of Dalvin Cook, managed to scrape together 46 yards. The next leading rusher was Josh Allen himself on 6 carries for 36. The whole team together combined for under 100 rushing yards. How is this such a big problem, and how has it not been addressed, given apparently the glut of great running backs that you can find on the cheap?
Yeah, they're just on every street corner at the moment. But yeah, it's a strange one. I think it's mainly down to play calling. I think it's mainly down to putting all of your eggs in that massive Josh Allen basket. He seems to be the only option for the Bills offense. And he didn't really acquit himself very well there on Monday night. I mean, he had that fumble, which was not great. He had another one where he was pushed back and then fumbled the football. It was scooped and scored, but came back for forward progress. So couple that with the 3 interceptions that he threw, it doesn't look good. That loss is firmly on the back of Josh Allen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Al, before we wrap up this slate of games, the New York Jets provided the ultimate cherry on top of the chaos cake that was week 1 when Xavier Gibson walked off with a punt return touchdown to end the game in overtime. It was pretty spectacular. He was one of the stars also of the Hard Knocks podcast. I nearly said the Hard Knocks show. How exciting was that? How cool was that? A kind of a starting highlight moment to end week 1.
Yeah, that was really unexpected. That was a cool moment at the end of the game, and especially for him, who might not have even made the team. To come in and make the team when he might not have, and then make such a huge play to seal off the game. That was really cool. That was really cool to see. And against the Bills, who they had their struggles, but like they're no slouches.
Yeah, I really liked how he got those last couple of blocks just to get it into the end zone, because realistically, when he got down to the 10-yard line, that was game over anyway. Kick the field goal, you win the game. But those last couple of blocks to get him into the end zone, it was excellent. Yeah, great story.
Spectacular walk-off. Right, guys, thank you very much. We made it to the end of the long, exhaustive list of week one. We might not necessarily do this every week, but I felt given week one, it was worth touching on all the storylines and where the season starts for each of these teams. Last week, we went through 2 games each, and we kind of broke them down looking forward to the week one action. We're going to do the same thing this week, but I've asked you guys just to give me one game each, and I might just ask you what is your interest. We won't necessarily go through man by man what we're looking for in that game, but we're going to start with you, Rian. Rian, what is your game to watch for week 2 of NFL action?
My game to watch is going to be the Eagles and the Vikings, 2 teams with 10 wins plus on the season last year, 2 teams who did not look as good as they should have in the first game of the season this year. So this will be a good yard marker for both teams to see where each of them stand. Is Kirk Cousins going to stuff the stat sheet and lose again? I would put my money on it. And Hurts, Jalen Hurts, there you go, only one of the top paid quarterbacks in the league. Is Jalen Hurts going to bounce back from his poor week 1 performance?
Al, where are you going to put your eyeballs this weekend in the NFL?
I'm putting my eyeballs on a real stinker this week. Bears, Bucks. I want to see if the Bears will continue that trend on offense, if they can make any improvements at all. And if they can't, they could go 0-17 games now. There's a realistic chance they're looking at the first overall pick again if they can, get something moving on offense, and if they can't get a bit more disciplined. And the Bucks, I'll eat my words. There's only a little bit on that. They look better. I thought that game was going to be a walkover. I thought the Vikings were going to walk all over them, but the Bucks defense looked nice. They caused a few turnovers, and I think if they can improve, I think they can be a fun team to watch. Only so much with Baker Mayfield, the quarterback, but only so much with Baker Mayfield, the quarterback. But I think they can be a fun team to watch. But I'm really curious if the Bears will continue this trend on offense.
Yeah, and my game to watch, I am going to cheat because I'm the host. So I'm going to have 2 games to watch, but they essentially are parallels of each other. Ravens against the Bengals and the Chiefs against the Jaguars. If you don't have a horse in the race in the early games, I will be putting my eyeballs on one of those 2 games. Essentially, rough starts for the Bengals and the Chiefs. They've got to come back now in week 2, and they're playing very, very capable opponents. Bengals face off against the Ravens at home. The Jaguars host the Chiefs. So 2 very difficult games. That's why I would highlight them. Thank you all for listening to us this week. It's been a long one. It's been a live one. We are delighted to get back to live shows. We love doing them, reviewing the NFL action. We love our AFI action, but the NFL is where we cut our teeth as a podcast. So we're delighted always to get back to that. Thanks again thanks again to our partners at the Backpage Pub in Dublin. We were there last Sunday. It was a fantastic venue. Red Zone and the Sky Games up on the TV. If you are out and about on Sunday or looking for something to do Sunday evening, get down there. Early games in Ireland kick off at 6 p.m. Get down there, have a bit of dinner. You'll be out by kind of 8:30, 9 o'clock, back in your bed, ready to go for Monday. We would highly encourage you to do that. Thank you all for listening to this live show. You can catch the repeats on it anytime on our YouTube channel under Center Podcast. It's also here on X, and you can follow us on X and on Instagram at under Center Pod, and of course on Facebook as well under Center Podcast. Rian, thank you very much for joining me this evening.
Pleasure as usual.
Al, thank you also very much for joining me this evening.
Thanks for having me. Good to talk football again.
Yes, absolutely. And from myself, Fionn, thank you guys all for listening, watching, whatever way you're engaging. Please do like, comment, subscribe,
We got some comments going today in the live stream. That's always exciting for us. We'll throw them up whenever we have them, and we'll engage as much as we can. So from me and from the guys, thank you very much. We'll see you again next week, where we review the action from week 2 and look forward to week 3. Thank you very much, and goodbye.